There it is. All right. Please continue, Detective Fallows.
Yeah, of course. So part of what I do with my job and what we're going to go over tonight is so as a community liaison detective, one of my jobs is to kind of connect with the community, connect with different businesses, just really anyone that needs services from the police department and kind of help them navigate those services. And so one of the things that we offer, and of course, as a police department, everything we do is free. Well, your taxes pay for it. Thank you very much. But meaning free, meaning we don't have a charge to come out and talk to you or anything like that. So one of the things that I do as a community liaison detective is a CPTED review. And CPTED is CPTED, and it stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And essentially what that is there's a course that you have to go through to be certified to do this. It's a week-long 40-hour course, and you get taught on how to evaluate a location. It could be a business, it could be a home, it could be an alleyway. It could be really anything. And you're taught, they teach you to like evaluate the location, see where there could be improvements made through the environment. So that could be things like cutting down and trimming down on bushes and trees, getting more lighting at the location, things like that. And so you'll notice, like usually in most of my community councils, I push really hard for people to like turn their lights on at night, you know, get additional lighting if your house isn't lit up or if your business isn't lit up. And that's because lighting has been shown through studies and things like that, that lighting is the number one way to help prevent crime at a location. You know, it's never a perfect thing, obviously, and certainly doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's definitely a good deterrent. And the reason is because when people feel like they're being watched, or there's lights on them, there's cameras on them, they feel like they're being watched, they tend to less do things, you know, less crime, less problematic things. And so the idea behind CPTED is to help take away those opportunities in an environment to make people feel at home to do crime. So for instance, if you have bushes that are higher than 2 feet, the CPTED principle is you want to trim that down to no more than 2 feet, because it's really hard for someone to hide and set up a camp or a tent or do drugs or break a window or things like that behind a 2 foot bush. It really doesn't give them very much cover. Same thing with trees. A tree canopy, like the bottom of where the tree branches are, you want that to be a minimum of 6 feet up for like a mature tree, obviously. And so again, that takes away the opportunity. Sometimes you'll see trees that are so overgrown, they're kind of touching the ground. And that gives a good opportunity for someone to slide up underneath there, set up a camp, again, maybe use drugs or, you know, whatever else they might be trying to do that's nefarious. And so that helps to cut down on these things. And then lighting, of course, lights up the area, again, makes people feel like they're being watched, makes it feel like you know, it's harder to do those things. So something that I offer to all of my areas is CPTED reviews. And I've done many of them. And I have a goal to do pretty much one a quarter at a minimum. They do involve a lot of like a decent amount of work to get one done, but I like to do them. And my goal is to do one a quarter in the Ballpark area, mostly in our focus area, but you know, I would love to help whoever needs help with it. And so one of the things that we did was I did one of an alleyway that we've had a lot of problems with in the Ballpark area. And if you're one of the neighbors that comes out and helps clean up trash and things like that, you'll know that this alleyway is super problematic. And so it's the alleyway between Main Street and um Amy, what is Richard Street, right? Main Street and Richard Street? Yeah, Main Street and Richard Street, and then it runs from gosh, remind me, Amy. I'm having a hard time. It's been a second.
Right behind the former Pride, well, the now former Pride Center to Andrew Avenue.
Andrew Avenue. There we go. I could not think of the name of the street. Yeah, so Andrew to the Pride Center, Main Street to Richard Street, and so it's that alleyway right there. So, are you going to be able to put up?
I'm looking for it. So what we had to do is we actually had to grammar request this CPTED review. But it was because it was an official police document, my understanding was, but it was incredibly informative, and we can share quotations from it at least. You know, we got to share that, for example, you know, Detective Fallow's official review. somehow kind of meant more that it was in an official police document that we had to request, than maybe if we just, than if it was just self-reported, that, Detective Fallis said, actually, there's no lighting for the entire alleyway whatsoever. Actually, there are quite a few hidden corners. There's quite a lot of brush and debris in this alley. I'm not sure if I can, I'm not sure if I have permission to share, or, when I made the grammar request, it wasn't, to share it in a Ballpark Community Council meeting. It was only for, to submit for a CIP application on behalf of the Ballpark Community Council, because this was up until mid-October, what we all thought was the most problematic alley in our community. It was just, there were regularly gunshots and crime there just because of its proximity to the Main Street motel and some other sensitive community locations. But right after I submitted that CIP application, some really exciting changes happened at that alleyway. Number one, ground broke on 40 apartments, and so the alley got closed for construction right in the middle, and so it prevented it from being a pass-through behind closed doors, so to speak. People don't use it as a pass-through anymore, where folks can't see what's going on. And Main Street Motel is no longer operational. So it's a lot of the traffic that was there is no longer. Things could change. It might not be a great place anymore, if a motel opens back up. But for now, it's doing great. But oh, please go ahead, Detective Fallis.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to hit on one thing while we're on the subject, because you do bring up a really good. So, what I don't want businesses to worry about and or personal residences is, sorry, I don't know how to say that word right, but anyway, people that live in homes. I don't want you to worry about your SEPTED being able to be grammar requested, because and the reason that we had to go through a special thing for Amy was because it was a public document about a public location. That's why it was available. When we do a SEPTED for a business, those are protected by law. They're not grammar requestable. And that's a good, and it's not really a bad thing, but it's a good thing, because if a business is trying to make improvements and they don't necessarily want their plans and their future ideas to get out to the public without their permission, then it won't. And so as a business, you can do whatever you like with your SEPTED. So if it's something that you want to share with your neighbors and share with you're welcome to do that. So it's not protected in the sense that you can't share it, but it is protected in the sense that we as the police department will not share it with anyone else. And so it is protected by Utah state law, and it is not grammar requestable. Grammar meaning a public records request. The reason that Amy could, again, do a public records request for this specific SEPTED that I did was because it was for a public government purpose and a public government location, essentially. So that is the difference. So if you are a business, it's not something to worry about of like, well, someone could just grammar request this and get all the intimate pictures of my business and all the intimate information that I need to update things or fix things at my business. So it really is just for you to take as recommendations and do as you would with it. So just wanted to add that caveat into it to clarify that. Are there any questions on SEPTED reviews, or let's see. I think my information is pretty.
John Hanson has a question.
I have a question for you. How do we request this review then? I'm very interested for myself, my own business, as well as spreading the word for other businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you'll just reach out to me through my email, usually is the easiest.
Okay.
And Amy should have it I'm sure it's on the Ballpark webpage, but if not, I'll put it in the chat and everything for everyone that's online. And then, but if you'll just reach out to me by email, and then we can kind of set up a time. And really what it consists of, I'd say the initial visit is probably plan on about an hour-ish, depending on like how large of a business you have or how large of a location you have. And then what I do is I come to the location, I'll take a bunch of photos. And again, this is why they're protected, right? Because you don't necessarily want the general public having photos of like your house, your property, your business, whatever it may be. So I'll take a bunch of photos, I'll look through the property and look for areas where we can improve things, look for areas where you're already doing well. And then I'll put together kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. And that's what really kind of takes a lot of time because I have to create slide, I have to like put in the recommendations and all those things. So that can take a little bit of time. And this is not something I do full time. So if I could do this full time, then I would have these sept heads kicked out like in a couple of days. It'd be easy. But because I have all my other duties on top of this, like the community council meetings that we're doing right now and things like this, it takes me a little bit longer to get them done. So this will kind of be on a first come, first serve basis. I won't be able to do like 6 or 7 at a time. So if you want me to do one for you, I'd say reach out sooner than later. So it's samuel.fallows@slcgov.com. And my last name is F as in Frank, Allows, as in Sam. So yeah, reach out to me by email. I'll reach back out to you. We'll get a time and a date, and I come out and yeah, just take the pictures and do all that stuff. And then once I get the PowerPoint done, come out again. It'll take maybe just maybe like 30 minutes to go over and just say, hey, these are my recommendations. Do you have any questions? Anything I can clarify? And then I give you the PowerPoint to keep on hand. And so you can keep those and you can utilize those to like show other board members or show like if it's an apartment complex, for instance, maybe you can take it to the owner of the apartment complex and say, hey, these are the recommendations the officer made on things we need to upgrade and do better at. And it's a really useful kind of document that helps just kind of lay things out with pictures and things like that of how to improve. So yeah, just reach out to me at my email.
Could you give that email one more time really quick? I was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
So,
yep, no worries. It's Samuel, Samuel, and then a dot, and then my last name, Fallows, Fallows, and then it's at slcgov.com. And you can also find my email on slcpd.com, our website. And if you go to community engagement and community liaison, then you click on that and you'll see my picture and what districts I cover. So if you live in District 5, 6, or 7, you can schedule this with me.
Happy to give it to you anytime, John.
Yeah, and Amy has it.
good.
We emailed about 5 times today, probably, right, Amy? So I know she's got it.
And under that's accurate.
So yeah, and yeah, and I'm happy to provide this service. It really is. It was a cool course to go through and learn how to do. It's not like a typical police officer thing that you get to do, so it's kind of something that takes you out of the realm, which is kind of cool. To be able to interact with people, not just a call for service or something negative all the time. So I like doing it. Any questions about crime or updates that I might be able to come up with on the back, on the back of my head? Any questions about crime in the neighborhood, things like that, while you've got me?
Feel free to put your paw on if you're over Zoom. Crime is down, both statistically and in human perception. That's pretty exciting.
It's awesome.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh, but the other thing, I know I threw this out over our email list, but one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up crime prevention through environmental design sounds kind of dry. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up is because there's a facade grant out right now through the city that this opportunity is open through the end of the month. The city seems to offer it about every year. It's through their business improvement program. And, I feel like, we didn't get necessarily recommended for funding this time around through the capital improvement grant process, but it oftentimes takes multiple times to get recommended for funding. The funding line is about 22% this time around for constituents submitted applications. So, but we got a pretty good score. If you are looking to be competitive in the facade improvement grant application, maybe if you had a you know, a SEPTED evaluation attached to your facade improvement grant application, maybe that would help make you competitive, and those applications are, you know, up to 50 grand. To me, that's not chump change, maybe just for you, but I think that sounds like an exciting opportunity. So I will throw that link again into the chat so folks can you know, check that out. Looks like Ann has a question about supporting members of our homeless community. If that's specifically for Detective Fowler's.
Yeah, I can answer that. So currently we have a lot of support going on. So I don't know how familiar you are with our homeless resource centers. We have 2 of them in the city. Well, 3, I guess, if you include the the juvenile one. But the 2 main ones are the Geraldine E. King Women's Center, and then the Gail Miller Resource Center. So I work with the Gail Miller Resource Center. They're more in my area. And so what we have to support our community members who are experiencing homelessness is we have 2 full-time homeless resource center squads now that are made up of officers. And so the squad that I work again a lot with is the Gail Miller Resource Center squad, and that's the one that's just right here in Ballpark. It's about 15th South and 3rd West, and that squad does a lot to engage as positively as they can with the homeless community. And so one thing that Sergeant Meinzer is the sergeant that's over that squad. He's done a phenomenal job at just really just forging a much better relationship with those experiencing homelessness and the police. And so one of the things he's done is called the New Hope Initiative, where there's a lot of different things that go into that, but one of them is like a coin program. And if you're a business that's interested in this, get with Amy and get Sergeant Meinzer's email address and reach out to him, because what he does is he provides these coins to businesses, and you can hand these coins out to people who are experiencing homelessness who might have done a good deed for you. So for instance, recently there was a gentleman that was cleaning up a parking lot of a business just without being asked or anything. He was just cleaning up trash that had been left behind. And they were super appreciative of that. So they gave him a coin. So then the person who gets the coin takes it to Sergeant Meinzer, and they can turn it in for, I believe it's a $5 gift card. And so they can take that gift card. It's like a Visa, so they can use it for anything, anywhere. And so it's just something to kind of help engage in a positive way businesses with those who are experiencing homelessness, as well as the positive aspect from the police side of it, where they're actually like they're getting something from the police that's not just, you know, a ticket or an arrest or something like that. And so that's one major thing they've done. And then the city in and of itself, we have a lot of resources in the city. We have our Heart team that is their full-time job, is this homeless engagement and outreach. We work with the VOA, who also, that is their full-time job as well, as to go out and like do outreach and things like that. And then of course we have like if you are a business that does have we have the SLC mobile app as well, that where you can report if there are camps on your property and things like that, so that we can go out and get those people services and offer them services. But then also on the other side of it, if it is someone who is refusing services or who doesn't want any kind of services, but they're also refusing to move, then we have our city team that helps kind of transplant that person to another place or get them over to a shelter or something like that. So sorry, it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, we do have a lot of resources in the city, and there's a lot of volunteer opportunities with like VOA and with the homeless resource centers. So if y'all are interested in those, they have websites where you can kind of sign up for that kind of stuff and be involved and get involved with that. So good question. Any other questions?
Oh, I'm gonna add on to that long-winded answer and say that we have quarterly neighborhood advisory council meetings for the Gail Miller Homeless Resource Center. And you're welcome to join and check out the webpage for the Neighborhood Advisory Council. We always welcome folks who have, you know, who view themselves as stakeholders. John Margetts is a regular attendee of that meeting. He's sitting back there smiling and nodding because he definitely is a participant and helps support neighborhood efforts in bridging the gap between guests of the Homeless Resource Center and neighborhood businesses who are looking for ways to support the resource center and, look for service opportunities for both neighbors and guests of the resource center. But I'll throw the link to that, those quarterly meetings in the chat, so you can, if you're interested in logging on and finding out what that group does as well. Is that, let's see, and then I can scroll down and say, does that answer your question? You want to?
Perfect. Any other questions for me in the link or in the audience? Or in the link, in the chat or in the audience? Yeah, I agree with Jeff. We quadruple this many people, so.
Shoot,
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I don't
but
believe,
talk loud for the mic if it's for Sergeant Meinzer.
yeah, I don't know if this is technically ballpark specific out of memory. It was just gonna be a question about like internal workings of the police, like, this has to do with the serial hit and run person. And how at first, like I remember watching a news story where the first hit and run case, there was a description of the vehicle with a license plate. But then I think a comment was made in the news story that that was not enough to go off of. And then I think there were like 5 more after that, and then the person was caught. I don't know if, I don't believe any of them were in the ballpark area. I think the closest one was like 13 feet south, which might be just on the border. I don't know if you can comment to that or not. I was just kind of curious. I remember that comment and like just thought it was a little bit peculiar. I had like a similar thing.
Can you say the comment one more time? I didn't quite hear you, sorry.
Yeah, there was a news story about the serial hit and run cases. And
Yeah.
the first case, the description of the vehicle as well as the license plate was reported that wound up being the vehicle. But then there were 5 more hit and runs after. And a comment was made that the description and the license plate was not enough to take action on for the first. I don't know if that's something you can comment on or not, but I just found that kind of interesting, similar to. I had a similar experience when I was a teenager where I was hit by a car, someone called in the plate, and then the police that showed up said that that wasn't enough to do anything. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you're asking. So yeah, there are two things we have to prove with hit and runs. So obviously we have to identify that it is the correct vehicle. So people steal plates all the time or take plates off cars and put them on things. So that's one hurdle we have to get through, which isn't really that big of a deal. If you run the plate and everything matches, then that's not too big of a deal. But the second one that's a little bit harder is proving who was driving the vehicle, right? Because you can't just assume that the registered owner is the suspect, because many times that's not the case. And so it's not an assumption you can, of course you will follow up on that information. And I'm sure that's how we ended up eventually, linking everything together and getting a case put together. But I'm sure what they meant by that. And I haven't seen that news article, so I don't know for sure what it says exactly, but most likely what they meant. But was it a police officer that made that quote, or was it just in an article?
It was a news story, like a video, and it was I believe it was someone at the police department. I see them a lot whenever the news are asking about police on like goings on. It's always the same kind of person who's replying.
Yeah, probably either Brent Weisberg or someone like that. Okay. So it was one of someone who was representing the police department, correct?
I believe so.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so I again, I haven't heard the quote, but most likely what he's trying to talk about, or what he was talking about, was proving who the driver of the vehicle was, right? And so that's another hurdle we have to get through. And so of course I'm familiar with this case, but I'm not really familiar with like the inner workings of it as much as just because I'm not really involved with that case very much. But hit and runs are pretty difficult. If you are involved in a hit and run, try and get, like, if you can safely do it, try and get a picture of who's driving the vehicle and the plate, because those things are helpful, but it is super hard. We have to, doing the follow-up and proving who is driving can be more of a difficult process. I think maybe that's what they were trying to say. But thank goodness that we were able to, arrest this individual, because it ended up obviously being much more than just a simple, hit and run and, you know, it ended up being attempted murder on multiple of the cases. So I'm extremely grateful for the hard work of our detectives that put everything together. And that also takes a lot of time too, unfortunately. When you are putting cases together, and you know, we're a very big police department for Utah anyway, at least. And we get cases, and these cases kind of happened in various locations and at different times and days. And so it takes time, unfortunately, sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes we can link things real quick and be like, oh, hey, I remember that car, and that car went over here and now it's over here, and it happened to be two women. That's odd, you know. So there's definitely, and obviously it was a lot more than two women, but like I'm just saying, when you're linking things together, sometimes that can take time too. And so when they're putting these investigations together, they want to get, you know, the most amount of justice for our victims as possible, so they don't, you know, I think that's part of what took a second. But again, yeah, it's a big police department with, you know, we're almost at 100,000 cases for the year already. We're in May. So it's just a lot that happens in this city on a daily basis. And so I think that's part of it too. But I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best I think I can answer it without like really diving into like uh the news story or any of that stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But that's a great question. I mean, and that goes for any investigation. That can be very frustrating for victims for sure, where you're like, hey, I have video of the incident, and or I have, you know, I saw the suspect, or I did this, I did that. And we love to have the video and things like that. Those can be very helpful. But sometimes we just can't identify who the suspect is, you know. And so we'll put one of the things that we do, just so you all know, is if we do have video where we can't necessarily like identify the suspect from like the victim doesn't know the suspect, something like that, we'll put out a literally like an APB, like an all points bulletin across the county, sometimes statewide, and even sometimes regionally, to like Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, if it's like a murder case or something really serious that we're trying to identify a suspect. And we'll try and get as many police departments involved and say, hey, does anybody recognize this individual? And then if it becomes like a really serious case, of course, we'll put something out to the news. And we don't see that very much, but if it's a serious crime, it's a homicide, it's an aggravated assault, something like that, where they're a danger to the public, they will put out a picture or a video. They will ask for the public's help in identifying a suspect. And a lot of times we're able to do it that way too. So, but there are some hurdles where it sucks when you're the victim, you're in the moment, you saw who did it, you know, and so you feel like this happened to me, like this, you know, and of course, we believe you and we want to get as much justice as possible. But it's also what we have to have, you know, the police department have to work off evidence. We have to work off, you know, what we can prove. And so video is always helpful, always, because we can always put it out and say, hey, does anybody recognize this individual? You know, and we've solved many cases that way. And so yeah, if you can safely get video of anything that happened to you, or a picture or something like that, all those things can be really helpful for sure. So I appreciate that question, because it is a frustrating to be, you know, to be on the victim side of that, and not have, you know, feel like not much is being done, or at least understand why, you know. So that's a great question. Thank you. Any other questions for me?
Anybody else? Representative Briscoe? Okay. Do you need to respond to your constituents' public safety demands?
They seem to be communicating them well.
Hot, okay.
The city lately is starting to respond.
I appreciate all the proactive responses that we've been seeing. Okay. Let's see, so I know Josh was going to sign on tonight, but he had an exciting opportunity to potentially either see or close on a home tonight. Congratulations, it's always exciting when somebody's maybe going to become a homeowner. So instead, we were maybe going to get, who's going to sign on instead? Sorry, I'm blanking out. Somebody else was going to sign on tonight instead of Josh, or show up in here. No, okay. To talk about just a few changes in the SLC mobile app. which I know, who doesn't love talking about the SLC mobile app, but you know, it's everybody's favorite. You guys been using the SLC mobile app?
Kind of.
Kind of,
I have it open right now, but
breaking my heart, man. What do you mean, kind of? Yeah,
it's like. It's kind of like the neighbor app where it's just, it feels like you're not,
I've used it a lot in the past. I haven't used it this year, but
okay, Rebecca Allen from Hart was gonna sign on the meeting, but I do not see her. Oh, I see Allison. Instead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't like to unmute myself. Yeah, Rebecca also, it's her daughter's birthday, so I said, don't join on the meeting. I'll jump on.
It's
for-
everything tonight, right?
I
Like,
know, it's a fun,
yeah, it's a fun time.
it's a fun night for everyone. But
yeah.
yes. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so I've been writing and communicating to folks just because, you know, for example, like, you know, I report a lot of carts, you know, a lot of carts in the neighborhood and they don't often actually take care of themselves, like, let's see if I'm never good at.
And then
Never-
wouldn't they be nice if they were self-driving like those cars, that they could just like get themselves back to where they're supposed to be?
I don't know if you've read the same press that I've read about self-driving cars, but actually, I don't think that would really work out for anybody very well if the carts were
Okay.
driving, you know? So,
Oh, I
but
have not read it, no.
that's just like what I've shared in the past week, you know, I feel like Pokemon about shopping carts, like I gotta catch them all. And so, you know, that's just from like in the few blocks around my house. Some of you might recognize our beautiful housing authority. A few spots near the Ballpark Stadium, Parkview Apartments, Boulevard Gardens. We just get a lot of carts. But you know, so I use the app a lot. But I've been getting some unusual responses, like, well, actually kind of a lot of unusual responses. And so I reached out to Josh because, you know, when, so unusual that like, that's what my email box looks like on Monday morning, just went after I've reported 5 carts. And that seems like a lot of, and I don't know if you can, like, oh, yeah. That seems like a lot of it's just one long list of abandoned shopping cart responses. I don't really know what to do with it.
I have one comment, sorry, it's unrelated, but I think the screen is a separate screen. So I don't know if you can get your mouse up there and click guide.
Drag that thing over.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's see if I can.
yeah,
This meeting is being recorded.
just click got it.
Yeah.
And then, thank you.
Ah, such relief. Okay. Sorry. But yeah, and it seems to depend on whether the cart has stuff in it or not, or where the cart's from, whether or not we're supposed to call an additional service in addition to reporting it in the app. This seems like a lot of hurdles. What's going on?
Yeah, we have been talking for longer and more about shopping carts than I ever thought in my life, and they are more complicated than I ever thought that they're more complicated, excuse me, than I ever thought they would. So we've, for a while, we've been trying to figure out how to better streamline. We've had some issues with, the people who we were assigning them to, picking them up in a timely manner. And so we've been we had one place that we were sending them that wasn't working very well. So then we now have 3, which is confusing for us as we triage 3 different entities that we're working with to pick up carts, depending on what type of cart, if there's stuff in them, so on and so forth. So we do have one company that's been really great and reliable. However, they're limited to picking up Walmart carts.
Oh,
So those we can send through them. And then we have been told by Romac, who picks up the bulk of the other carts, that the best way to get them picked up quickly, rather than us sending them a whole long list, is to call their number. And I'm going to put the number in the chat, and leave the address where that cart is, and if you know what kind of store it is. And then that just helps them streamline and get to them more quickly, which I know is an additional step for those of you who are used to submitting them in SLC Mobile. So if you want to not submit them in there, if they're not Walmart carts, and just call the number directly to not do as many steps, please feel free. We're hoping, as we continue to work through things, that we will have a solution in the next several months that it can go back to just one person that we're working with and they can pick them up quickly. But for now, unfortunately, this is what we're working with. Oh, and then the third response, sorry, Amy, you mentioned, the other thing, if we have a cart that's full of belongings and we can tell they're abandoned belongings, a previous person group we were working with would just dump the belongings on the street and take the cart, which just creates a new problem that we didn't want. So we have an organization who will come and pick up the trash and the cart together. So that's kind of why we have 3 different responses depending on the situation. And I apologize for any confusion that is caused. But yeah, oh, the other thing too with the number, not only does the company, they said they prefer and can respond more quickly if you call that number, but also our team gets over 6,000 reports a year, and we triage those so that bio waste and needles and things are our top priorities that we look through. And shopping carts are generally the last ones that we get to. So again, calling that number can kind of get those on their queue quickly as well. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Doesn't make it any clearer, I know. It can be difficult for us to discern which way to go as well.
Amy?
Yes, please. What budget or organization is providing funds for these shopping cart bounty hunters?
That's a good question. It is not us. And that's part of it too. We don't have an official contract. It's just they get paid when they return the carts to the store. So
The stores are paying them?
yeah,
Cool. I was gonna say shopping carts are expensive.
they are. They definitely are. It sounds like there's a market if you do want to start a nonprofit to pick up shopping carts. No. But yeah, so that's who's picking, or excuse me, that's who's paying. The stores pay to get them retrieved. Good question.
I wanted to make sure the city wasn't paying for it.
Oh yeah, no.
Yes, sir.
Out of curiosity, do you happen to know what the, bounty on shopping carts is?
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like I've heard, I don't know for sure. I feel like I've heard 30, somewhere between 30 and 50. But again, I don't know. That's just a guess, and I heard it and I don't know how true it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll put my email in the chat, and actually I'll put the whole I'll put my email, but also the Heart team's email in the chat, so you can email me individually or the whole team if you have any additional questions.
I think our community is particularly affected since we live at the sort of the exciting junction of like big box central and residential and also homeless resources. That makes it so that we're just at this unique like cart spreading area. And so, which, yeah, it might seem like a strange thing to be interested in, but yeah, if you have a lot of carts right nearby,
Load them up.
I'm gonna take that to mean load them back up on the nonprofit trucks to get them back where they need to go. Gotcha. That's an optimistic view. Okay. All right. Any more Heart Team questions? Allison's very qualified to answer lots of questions beyond just carts. Like way more things. Homeless resources, in fact. Deeply qualified. But if not, we can transition into new housing in the neighborhood. Oh, sorry, Allison.
Just one quick question, Allison. How did the drive for the kits that you guys were putting together, did that turn out all right?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, it turned out really well. We were able to, between the Geraldine King and the Gail Miller Resource Center, hand out over about 400 kits. And we still have some additional kits left that we're going to give some to the resource centers and then some to the Sergeant Sanders and Sergeant Meinzer so that they can give out as they're doing their outreach in the neighborhoods. So thank you to Dynapack for being a station, a drop-off location, and thank you for everyone who donated hygiene kit supplies. We really appreciate it, and I don't know, we're thinking about making this a yearly event, because the barbecue too, if you were able to come by at the Gil Miller or the Geck, was really successful. I think we served over 200 meals at both places. Just had a really great time hanging out, and we had perfect weather, which is not always easy to do in spring in Utah. So yeah, so thank you to everyone who supported those events.
I heard there were also 250 donuts that got eaten. And
Yes, yep.
yeah, very exciting. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Lowe's contributed donation. Sounds like it was really a team effort. So,
Yes, yep. It was yeah, definitely a great community effort, and I think it was, yeah, a great time of getting together and getting to know everyone a little bit better. If there's no other questions, yeah, my email and the whole team's email is in the chat, so please reach out at any time.
all right, let's learn about some housing. It's always exciting to learn about housing. Black Box Studios, we'd love you. It is your cue. We'd love to see. Would you like to share?
Yes, I will share my screen. Can everybody hear me okay? If I'm quiet, I will speak up.
If you want, you could.
That's the
move-
microphone right there.
Yeah, would you want to like, you could strategically move just a few seats over and then you could be like right underneath it. And,
Project my voice.
okay. Can folks in Zoom land hear? How do you feel?
Okay,
Thumbs up. Thank you.
yeah. Is this volume good?
All right.
My name is Danielle Park. I'm the architect for a new development coming in, really towards, I guess, the south boundary of what's known as the Ballpark community. So this project address is about 2030 South Main Street. So if you're familiar with that intersection at 2100 South and Main Street where the car wash is, this is a parcel just directly north of that car wash. On the west side of Main Street. So the parcel is currently vacant. And the proposed development here is going before the Planning Commission. And so I think the reason that we're here tonight is because we're going to Planning Commission to get the community's input or have a chance to comment on it. The reason that we have to go before Planning Commission is maybe a little bit odd. The proposed development, as you can see, has 2 buildings. Each of them have 4 townhomes in them. They are 3-story townhomes. And this is an existing alley here that it would basically be between the car wash here to the south and then these new proposed buildings. And because we have this building to the west side or the rear of the lot that doesn't have any street frontage, by default, that needs to go before the Planning Commission for their review and approval. And so because we're going through that process, what the owner and ourselves have decided to do is try to make the project kind of a little bit better in a couple of different other considerations. And so one of those is, if you can kind of see along the north side here, we actually don't have a required setback on this north boundary. We're providing one just to have a little bit of a landscape buffer there. And typically in that side yard, you're not allowed to place condensing units or equipment in that side yard. And so because we're providing that side buffer yard, rather than placing the equipment, in the front yards where residents might be kind of hanging out or barbecuing or sitting on their front porch, we thought it made sense to push it to the side of the building. So that's a consideration that will also be part of the Planning Commission review. And in addition to that, a transformer for the site, we've identified what we think is a pretty good location out of sight here on the northwest corner with all of the required clearances. And so we're also asking for that at planning commission. And I should point out on the north side of this parcel is a parking lot, so it's not abutting any other residential parcels on that side. And then there's also an alley here down the west side of the parcel. It's an existing alley that's really not used, it's not paved. It kind of weaves its way through the block and then gets really narrow and cuts out onto another street. So those are and then the other consideration to the planning commission, and let me kind of scroll through. Here's some 3D renderings of the massing and material selection of the townhomes. So when zoning laws were written, most people were satisfied with 8-foot ceilings. And so there's a 30-foot height limit in a lot of these zones. And it made sense back then. Nowadays, I think for a new development that we want to feel really nice and modern and up to sort of newer standards, 9-foot ceilings is sort of the typical height. And so for 3 stories, in order to get the 9-foot ceilings on all 3 stories, we would be asking for a height increase of from 30 feet to 32.5 feet. And that 32.5 feet would be measured to, here's a section through one of the townhomes. That's to this highest point here in the corner, if you can see my cursor there. And so that allows, again, sort of more standard ceiling heights on all 3 levels. Because I heard the detective talking about safety, maybe I'll just, do you have a question?
Can I ask what the current zoning is?
Yes, the current zoning is commercial corridor.
Quick couple of questions.
Sure.
I'm assuming the reason why current code wants you not putting in side yards, air conditioning units, et cetera, is not a consideration of the neighbors. But the assistance neighbors are a parking lot.
Correct.
And so you need 2 things on the planning commission. You need that. And you also need a slightly over 2-foot consideration. Are those the only things you need from the planning commission?
And the fact that that rear building does not have street frontage.
Okay. So is this 8 units, 4 units? 8.
8 total.
How many square feet per unit?
So the end units are 2 bedrooms and they're about 2,400 square feet. The 2 middle units are 3 bedrooms and 2,700 square feet. The difference between the 2 units is when you get up to the 3rd level. The end units have a double height space where you would come up the stairs and there would be sort of an open loft with kind of a double height space. The 2 middle units actually gain another bedroom upstairs and then an upper rooftop deck. And so in the renderings, you can kind of see how that plays out in the massing. So we have 2 anchor units on the side, and then in the middle, that kind of carves out a nice outdoor space.
I'm assuming these are market rate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed that. Are these for sale units or are they rental?
These are rentals. Yep, and they each have a 2-car garage. So on the site plan, you can see there was this alleyway between the 2 buildings, and then that accesses a private 2-car garage for each unit. Yeah, I guess I'll just open it up for any questions or comments.
Do you have a rental figure?
Not yet that I'm aware of. You know, the general, the general goal, I mean, is really for residents to take pride in this location. So really trying to create, you know, they have private front yard spaces and backyard spaces so that they really, you know, kind of take pride in their home and neighborhood. I wanted to talk a little bit just about that back alley because I heard the detective talk about the safety. But we've been, you know, as this moves into more of a construction set, this alleyway would be lit, with lighting, you know, on a solar cell. So as the day ends, this will always be lit, as well as some lights mounted to this fence along the back alley, so that that area is also constantly illuminated at night.
On the east side, I'm looking at an aerial view of Google Maps, but on the east side, it looks like is that landscaping there that you're putting in the park strip there?
Yeah, and so there's actually 2 existing trees here that are pretty small. And the city arborist has done an analysis of the site and asked that those remain, even though they're pretty small, they're healthy and they'll be a good species to keep. So we'll, and then, with the list that he provides with acceptable species, we'll landscape the remainder of that.
So you'll be planting, it looks like a couple of extra trees there, is that?
Yep, and so everything that's brown is essentially water-wise landscaping, and then the green is actually artificial turf. And that front yard area for this building, and then this quasi front / backyard area for trees.
Is this SketchUp?
This is in Revit.
Ah.
It's another 3D program similar to SketchUp.
Did you say how much the rent was or no?
No, that hasn't been determined yet. This is sort of still the early due diligence phase, so that's unknown at this time.
And can we know who the owner is? Or is that private?
Yeah, he's right here.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on anything.
Yeah, no, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm highly invested in this neighborhood. My business is directly across the street, across Main Street, and so. Yeah, I mean, my main goal is to improve the neighborhood for the residents there and also the other businesses. The north of the store. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Thanks.
Kind of a question then that'll logically follow, what kind of additional sound control are you putting in these units? Because if you, as somebody who spends a lot of time in that immediate area, I mean, I think I would be surprised by saying like, a car wash is really loud, but I actually jog past that car wash pretty frequently, and I'm always astonished at like, I have to turn my headphones up.
Yeah.
All the way, you
So,
know,
yeah, I mean,
like,
my office door opens directly up to that car wash.
Yeah.
So,
you're
familiar
very
with
well
what's
aware,
there, yeah.
yeah.
You know, the south wall of these buildings, they don't have very many windows. The windows that are there will be probably more insulated than typical. And then I will I plan to negotiate with the car wash owner, so I know, and try to put some sort of sound wall that comes off of it where the cars come out there, that hopefully mitigates some of the noise that comes across there.
Right. And I wouldn't have guessed that car washes are really profitable, but we've all watched Breaking Bad. So,
Yeah.
sorry, hope that's a polite joke.
I just have like general questions, it's not like specific about, like I think where you, like it's not specific about this, but it's like more like where you got to this point. It's like, do you guys consider like higher densities? I noticed that there's a lot of this like row homes kind of up on Main Street. Is that just essentially, it's just the most profitable, like currently given the, like whatever the market pressures are? And then another is, do you consider like trying to get any type of affordability, like grants from the city or anything like that? Or did you determine that that wasn't really necessary for folks to work out for y'all?
I can speak to the density portion. Yeah, when we're first running through iterations of how to place a building on a site, our goal was also high density and really trying to maximize density on the site. And so we have our constraints of the front yard setback here. So this is actually the property line, which there's so much public landscape strip on this road section. It's kind of crazy, but so we're right up against a 15-foot front yard setback. And then we also have, let's see, a 10-foot rear yard setback and landscape buffer. So with those constraints, we played around, with running alleys a couple of different ways. And when it came down to the size of the units and the number of bedrooms and making these units comfortable and spacious, this is the number that made most sense.
So you didn't want to go to the planning commission to ask for relaxing of the setback constraints as well as the other things. Yeah,
That's typically a lot harder to get passed and approved.
I think 1805 South Main. Cowboy Partners, I think that they.
The variance on the setback.
Yeah, they're putting, it's apparently 8 or 9 units, or I think 8 units, and on 16 units.
And they got a setback variance to achieve that.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know what setback variants haven't been granted in our neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, that's kind of good background to know. Yeah. I mean, typically it seems like,
I mean, a lot of our neighborhood is transitioning to home-based zoning, right? I know that's the northern portion of the neighborhood, and I don't know to what extent this area of the neighborhood is going to be included in, the thinking about stationary, to what extent does this site count as transit-oriented development relative to either the 2100 South Track site or any of the S line, but I would think that you guys would be pretty close, if not.
pedestrian distance to the 21st.
Uh-huh.
Is Sarah?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Yeah.
Right, so this site is outside of that ballpark station area plan
Right, that
Where
one,
the,
but not, but.
for the mixed use state, or mixed use zoning is going in. The city is just starting to work on some other mixed use zones that, aren't close to adoption, and the CC zone is likely going to be part of that project.
Right.
So there'll probably be some changes in the future. I think we had talked about setbacks at some point, but I think that's something that we would have some flexibility with. It would be another request. So that kind of touching on most of the questions. Oh, and it is, didn't look into the S line, and I should have, but it is approximately a half a mile to the track station, and then there are 2 frequent service bus routes within about a quarter mile. So it has a fair amount of transit service.
It's like one of the few neighborhoods is like that's affordable that you can live without a car. Yeah, because you have central planning. That takes you like everywhere, and if not, you have the 200 off the 2-minute service, and then you have the 22 service as well as the S line. And the S line, which like kind of is like a little bit staggered, so it's like 10-inch service on that.
Friend, you're really leaning into that UTA hat you're wearing. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
Is one of those few that has all 3 units. So like you wanted to go downtown, it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, like 5 minutes. Yeah, because it's like, it would be cool to see like higher density and then like less car, because it sounds like, it's like, I wish there was like less parking restrictions, something like that, there's like, it's like you could have like more units or units that would be more affordable, for people who didn't want to have a car.
I mean, these
The
sound
privilege to drive,
like nice units, but I'm really sympathetic to the idea that this is really close to a lot of transit, so I understand where you're coming from, big time. Just in our last meeting, we took a big old deep dive into what South Salt Lake is right about to do to reinvest in their Central Point plan and the 300 West reinvestment plan, so we're all topped up you know, big changes that are coming in that area, and although like that, you know, just that tiny little corner of Ballpark might seem like, oh, big parking lot and like an empty lot and like real big setbacks, I think that's. I think that's a very temporary way to look at that. Not to pressure you,
South Salt Lake is not invested in walkable community or transit oriented community at all.
South Salt Lake,
Not at all. And
but
that's-
they're about to, they're about
But
to
you-
dump, I mean, that's the perception, or that's what they're trying to do.
The view of Salt Lake City or South Salt Lake from where this is
Yeah.
every single thing they put in is a drive-through. Every single.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'm surprised Winco doesn't have a drive. Because, I mean, everything they put in, and believe me, I mean, as somebody that works in that neighborhood every day, it's disheartening.
I think it's like, my understanding is that it was easier to get the drive-through put in from a logistical perspective than to put more housing in.
Yeah,
Yeah, and in terms of like permits, I think it would have been held up for like about a year versus the end that could start construction immediately.
right.
Yeah, and then also they put that mixed, I think it's like mixed use on the west side of the main, but then they didn't put any bike lane. So the bike lane is like just continuous when you main, like from 21st to 21st.
The reason they're all in there is because it's incredibly profitable for the developer. Yeah, drive-throughs are more profitable than anything else you can put on a piece of land, especially in that area, so that's why they're there.
This is maybe like just a silly question. Yeah, is, so it's like if these were cheaper to build due to like less red tape or like less, you know, design and stuff like that, it's like, would you, yeah, it's like, I assume that you would still put them in market rate, right? Because it's like, then you would just make more money instead of like trying to make like a fixed amount of money, trying to make the max amount of money. So like if they cost less to build or do like this would be like working, like easing the, you know, the permitting process or whatever. It's like that would actually affect the price because the market dictates what the price is, not the cost. So those are not very. So I think it's probably housing affordability.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it typically they're to do the lower income housing, that they'll want to be a loan that's associated with that has a lower interest rate, or, you know, like LIHTC or HUD, those types of loans are typically when developers are have the motivation to do that. And that's what kind of makes it pencil, right? It's like, is the lower interest rate on the loan or whatever term.
I think if you could access a lower interest rate loan with no strings attached, would you then charge less for the rent, or would you charge market rate because there's no strings attached with the lower interest? Because that's kind of like a utility question.
Yeah.
And I mean, a LIHTC grant typically ropes people in for like 50 years. The strings are pretty tight.
Yeah, one of the problems with affordable housing is keeping it affordable. It's over a long period of time, keeping it up. Salt Lake City and some places in Utah County are starting to buy up land. It's a land bank, housing bank. So the city owns the land and they help family get into a place, or a couple, or home residents get into a place. They don't have to pay the property taxes. We can reduce prices, and we can make it easier for people to get into homes that way. Some cities have a lot longer start than we've had, and land inside Salt Lake City only has is just pricing anywhere. It's pricey in Utah, but it's very pricey in Salt Lake City. And one of the issues that we haven't discussed a lot, we put a lot of emphasis on building housing, which is important, but we also need to preserve the affordable housing we got, like flip. If it's possible, there's so many balls in the air trying to get people to be able to afford stuff. I hope some of the stuff we're throwing against the wall sticks on workers. Because we desperately need to help reduce the cost out.
We've just thrown a bunch of balls at you here. Want to do eight rental townhomes? You want to do like 40 micro, you know? Yeah.
that like one last question? But the choice for rental units instead of for sale units, is that like a liability? Cause I know that like it's typically like condos or townhouses there, so a lot more liability on the building stage when it's being sold versus a rental. Was that kind of like laying in that decision there, or are you sort of, if it was like proximity to your primary business is also like really nice to be able to.
Yeah, yeah, I want to improve, have some control over the improvement of the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's cool to see vacant lots turn into housing.
And more housing will help with the housing prices.
You could just get the OC Tanner, I think it's OC Tanner over the that's right, and that could be something other than just like the huge over.
That was gonna be my question, what are those parking lots, the north, are those OC Tanner?
Yeah, they're all OC Tanner.
Do they use those, or they utilize?
They did before COVID, and since COVID happened, they have not been full for a day, other than like for a few conferences that they have.
Do they use their soccer field?
There's usually a couple people playing out there, yeah.
In the community.
I think it's, yeah, I think it's open to the public, people can go down there and play. I mean, OC Tanner is a great neighbor. They really keep it nice, they yeah, I mean, they own a ton of land there and yeah.
Right.
Do you have any perception about how long they're gonna stay your good neighbor? Like indefinitely or
I don't.
just curious?
They haven't given any signs of leaving, and they just purchased the parcel that the Wells Fargo was on.
I see.
And so they own that too, that was the one carve out of their massive block. And so now that sits vacant. And it'll be,
Now they can put a hotel on.
yeah, or a drive-through. Because it's already got drive-through capabilities, so.
Where are drive-throughs are illegal in Sugar House now,
Yeah.
right? But they're still legal.
But they still let them go.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're a Chick-fil-A, they'll let you do it.
We can't go do ones, that's the difference.
Right.
All right. Any other feedback we can give you besides encouraging you to think about all the transit that may be coming down the line? I don't know.
Yeah, we tried to take it all into consideration,
Yeah,
do what's best for that.
all right. Well, good luck. My only contribution was it can be really loud out there and it's shocking.
I believe,
But you know,
yeah, no, I've thought about that a lot.
yeah, I think you have. Well, best of luck. I agree with you. Those are very large setbacks there. So, but I'm glad the trees are getting preserved. I like trees. We need to keep them.
I planted them myself, so.
Did you
Yes,
really?
Yeah,
Bless your heart.
I didn't.
I did, yeah.
I wondered based on size, like if you
Yeah.
went to caliber, I was like, you had, like, I wondered if you did that.
Yeah.
Well,
We
that's
got
awesome.
them through the tree
Oh, cool.
program, so
Okay.
we donated them, equipment. So, yeah, plans to keep it.
All right. Well, that is really all we have today, unless, John, you want to talk about any of your really exciting experience going to the state legislature and advocating for a community? Do you want to talk about your clean team? Do you want to talk about anything? You weren't here the past month to talk about all your.
Representative Briscoe could talk about that, because it was his bill that I went up there for.
Well, I know, but he's been here, you know, you have, you weren't. here.
But sometimes they will listen to you because you live there, because you have a business that's in town.
Right. In brevity, it was an eye opener for me as a business owner to go up to the Hill and testify in a committee hearing for a bill that Representative Briscoe had started up. This particular bill was to assist and help business owner or property and business owners in the vicinity of a homeless resource center that have vandalism done to us. So broken windows, property damage. And the idea being that there is much money that has gone to the homeless community, to the homeless centers to help them out. But not a lot of attention to the people who are on the brunt end or the receiving end of some of the unfortunately, people who go in the neighborhoods and maybe throw a rock through a window for no reason at all, or vandalize. And so we as business owners are stuck to pick up that bill and get the window fixed, as you well know. And this bill is an idea to ask for funding from the state level to assist with broken window policy. So I went up to testify on behalf of business owners in the neighborhood. We're all
Did a great job.
pretty united in that effort. Unfortunately, the bill didn't make it through, or it made it through committee, but not through the House. And we're hoping next year to try and resurrect that, get some.
So what's the current remedy? Just insurance, just an insurance claim?
So it's, yeah, insurance is one remedy. There are, there's deductibles that have to be met. So sometimes it's, if it's a $900 window and your deductible is $1,000, you didn't get it.
Yeah.
So,
And if you lower your deductible, sometimes they'll jettison people who.
yeah.
Then you always have, how often do I submit a claim?
Oh, you got a photo. That's great.
So can I add one thing, Amy?
Please do.
I reached out to the state homelessness. And someone in the Salt Lake City sent, and they sent me some documents.
The new
The
committee.
city council before the bill,
Oh,
while we
before,
were in the process of
before
writing
the
the
bill.
bill.
okay,
The city council. And I don't know whether this is, I don't know whether it's executive branch or legislative branch, whether it's council and mayor, both. They sent me documents from like 5 western cities, Tacoma, Seattle, Albuquerque, 3 or 4 others, who have different variations of a fund that the cities provide. And this is another option for us to consider as a group. And maybe we change slightly how we go after the state. And they allow people, and they call broken windows.
yeah.
And they have some, they have some stipulations that we thought of, like you can't get you can't get a home insurance or a business insurance and then lay something on top of that. It's gotta go over and above what you've got, help for if you file an insurance claim. But they allow, one of the things they were kicking around, like you could make up to 2, the max you could ask for in a year would be 2 claims a year, up to $2,000 max. And they didn't restrict it. It looked to me like it was, there had to be a police report, which I've discussed with Wayne Niederhauser. We don't want to create anyone can say, my kid's bike was stolen and I know it was homeless people and they get a new bike. I mean, we want to have some accountability for claims. But we should discuss that this summer.
Right.
About how we want to, I'll file it again, and Senator Plum's working with me.
Right.
But we definitely want to talk about the best way forward, and I mean, I have constituents who live just north of Liberty Park on 9th South. Who tell me a couple of tents grew to a much larger thing, and once it got bigger, things started disappearing from the property. And not everyone believes it's the homeless people themselves, but we don't know. And anyway, there seemed to be some paths forward. People have talked about it. We should push it harder. I love the fact that we care for these people. And I love the fact that we're working hard to make sure they're not sleeping under cardboard or anything. But we need to show some love to the people who live by these centers or businesses that have people hanging out in their alleyways in front. And we need to recognize that they're paying a price to and help them.
What you just said about people hanging in alleyways, like their businesses, is the best thing to do is to call the non-emergency line?
Here's what Sergeant Meinzer told me 2 years ago before he was ensconced. He said, Representative, when I was doing beat and I drove by a place and I saw 1 tent or 2 tents, I didn't have a lot of calls. I didn't have very many neighborhood people call, and it looked pretty neat. I drive by. He said the problem, from his point of view, as law enforcement, as a first responder, the problem is when the 1 tent or 2 tents becomes this. And then that's when they start getting the calls, where they start getting the health concerns, the drug concerns, the abuse concerns. So what I told the person who lives on 9th South was, when you see 1 tent become 2, call. Sergeant Meinzer got me on a phone call. I just lurked 3 years ago. And once a week, there's a call and there are 25, 30, 40 people on it, police, shelters, health. And they have a list, and they have a list and a spreadsheet of every encampment in the city. There were over 80 or 90. And they go through them one by one, and they update them. Oh, that one's moved. I think if you, oh, was it? I drove by there last week. One of the columns is, should we abate? Should we clean out? And then they have a discussion. So by the time in the alleyway becomes problematic. And then it goes into this other process, and they look at it every week, and they don't make a decision to abate that week because they go through it and they triage and they prioritize. Get it in early. But as soon as someone's got someone sleeping in their backyard, as soon as you're picking up litter or bottles, as soon as the first instance, even if it's only one or two people, but it concerns you, call the Salt Lake City Mobile.
Okay.
Call, just make sure it gets registered, and get your neighbors to do it too, if it impacts them.
I noticed something yesterday and I called the non-emergency line. 20 minutes later, an officer drove down the alley and they were gone, but.
But you registered, but you called, so they have that. And they do talk about this, they do try and aggregate. There was a separate call I didn't get off for people in vehicles and campers. So that's a separate process.
Interesting.
I know the police chief told me that there is a city ordinance that says you can't stay in it has something to do with the vehicle, but didn't have an engine capable of driving it. And so they were trying to tow a lot of those, because some people will tow an old vehicle or camper to a place. They couldn't get there on its own, and then it's their home. And that's treated differently apparently by city code than something that's capable of self-transportation. So we've got all these issues. But anyway, I would get on it early. I think you did the right thing. I can't promise, given all the resources they have. When we had the road home, and there were like on a good June, July night, there were 1,500 people in there, plus another 1,000 in front. About 35% of all the police in Salt Lake City were those few blocks. So we were paying out of our property taxes as residents of Salt Lake City to deal with that. We're still doing it to a degree. Which is why I get frustrated when people tell me Salt Lake City should bring it up.
You said property taxes? Yeah. I feel like it's like.
We pay taxes to fund the police department.
Oh, like you said property taxes. Yeah.
We pay property taxes to fund the police department. We pay property, we pay sales.
Okay, so now I was like, I didn't know if this was so like the property taxes.
The income taxes mostly go to the state for public education. But the property taxes, if you look at them carefully, there's a Salt Lake, there's a county line, but there's a Salt Lake City line. And some sales taxes.
Good to see you.
Are we done?
I think there was a question online.
Oh. I just had a comment. Is that fine? I don't know what's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just on the conversation of homelessness, like so I live in C9 flats, so I like in near Jefferson, like I see Jefferson Park from my window. And I think like I always am reflecting on like homelessness, and like as a community, I think we separate ourselves too much from the homeless community and think that we're somehow different. And I hear that a lot in the like rhetoric when people talk about homelessness and like displacing people. And I think rather we should think of it as a responsibility that why are people in our community homeless? And why like are rent so high and people paycheck to paycheck, and I see like families and women and children and people my age on the street, and it's just I feel like that is never part of the conversation of like empathy and compassion and I don't know, just kind of being like, why in our society do we see so much destitution? So yeah, just wanted to add that.
But I hope tonight that you heard a little bit in our comments about trying to brainstorm about maybe how we could get opportunities for denser housing near transit. A little bit of a reflection and thinking about that we do as a community try to strategize. And I just used a really made up word. Where I am in terms of how much I've slept this week, but we do think about, like. You heard a lot of people tonight think about how can we get more housing here? So it is something that we do feel a responsibility towards. And I do think there's a little bit of an us versus them mentality, but it's that we are the people who have resources. And so, yeah, we do feel like we have responsibility because we recognize that we're the people right now who have the resources. And maybe we won't always be those people, but right now we are. And so we do have to be the ones responsible. for trying to do that.
Amy,
Yes,
I think homelessness is an indictment on our society. We aren't paying people enough.
I hear you trying to get your representative salary increased, Representative
No.
Erskine. This isn't the audience.
No, we don't do it, we don't do it for that, we shouldn't do it for that. Congress is tired of hearing about vets being homeless. They $1 billion on helping vets become less homeless, they cut it in half. They put $50 billion into it. We are adding in this county, we are adding another shelter for people with children. There's one in Midvale. We are adding in Sandy this year a shelter for homeless people who are medically fragile.
Yep.
It's not the in-between, it's not hospice. There are 13 facilities in the state that have more than 25 beds. Half of them, a little bit more than half in this county. They're in Utah County, they're in Washington County, Richville, Logan, Ogden. So this is a state issue. It's a national issue.
And it's a local issue.
And it's a neighborhood issue and it's a business issue if it's in your street.
And that, to that comment, I would also add, is I've been endeavoring to make inroads and work with the Gail Miller Resource Center in our neighborhood. I've been told on multiple occasions, the solution to homelessness is not a single point solution. It is not the state of Utah. It is not the county of Salt Lake. It's not the city of Salt Lake. And it's not the people living around it. It's a conglomeration of all of us doing what we can, whether we're a neighbor in the neighborhood, a business owner in the neighborhood, or a state, county, city entity. And so it's going to take all of us working what we can do to help it out.
There any interest at all, like at the state legislation level to like relax the constraint to allow like municipalities to set their own minimum wage, you know, because it's like right now isn't like every city and like the entire state of Utah is managed by the federal minimum.
We're still 725.
Yeah, which is like what it was like 15 years ago.
Good joke.
Like I remember when it raised from 515 like up, and then another things like that.
You know, Burger King and McDonald's are now setting them on quite.
Yeah,
I mean,
Like $17 an hour.
yeah,
yeah,
Businesses.
Amazon a couple years went to 15 or something, and they said they would hire you that day.
yeah. It's
Depends
50
on
an
the
hour.
line, see if
It's
you like it.
still 30,000 a year. You know, so that means that it's like.
My daughter's living in my house and paying me $600 a month rent because that's 30% of it.
It's like there used to be places for 600 a month, you know, that were like pretty readily available.
We're in some ways, Utah's the Texas of the North, low wages, some ways, low, not a lot of businesses have a lot of leeway to do whatever the heck they want, low taxes, low regulations.
Yeah, so is there any interest in the state, the area state representative? It's like,
I'm interested,
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm not the majority.
yeah,
And they're upset, there are a handful of people who are frustrated because they forget they have a gun, and going to the airport. And federal law is very clear, you don't bring them on complaints. And they didn't like the way they were getting back to them. So they made a threat to Salt Lake City this year that if they didn't like the legislations coming out, they were gonna take away Salt Lake City police from the airport, and they were gonna replace them with highway patrol. So they do this every now and then. But it's like, you better listen to us, or we're just gonna do you over. They don't always come through. They did do the inland port. They did snag stuff. And then thought better of it. Now they're screwing up the Great Salt Lake. I did go to that Great Salt Lake inland port. It started as up in Ogden, Beaver County. It started as 900 acres. right next to the Union Pacific line, which is a great way if you're gonna take stuff on and off the railroad, right? It's now 9,000 acre. It increased 10 times, most of it north. With some wetlands, which they say they don't protect, so. But I agree with you, I think we should allow people to do their thing. And I think the mayor is always trying to thread that needle of trying to defend Salt Lake City and do some things. We know that Salt Lake City runs a swamp in a way that doesn't get blowback. That they don't come in and then tell, I mean, I'll give you one example. Salt Lake City passed Ben McAdams working for Mayor Becker. And they got the LDS Church to agree that Salt Lake City would pass an ordinance that no one in the city could be denied housing or a job for being lesbian, gay, transgender, bi, well, queer. The woman who had the seat before me was a lesbian. For 2 or 3 years in a row, she won state legislation. She walked into the Senate President's office and said, here's the deal. I will not run my legislation if you promise me that you will keep any Republican senator from running legislation to take this away from Salt Lake City. He said, okay. And then there was a huge debate inside the LGBTQ community. And there were good arguments on both sides. We got it in Salt Lake City, we're not going to get it statewide. And her argument was they will kill it. They will kill it. And what happened was Equality Utah and Brandy Bakken spent 3, 4, 5 years and went out and got similar to Salt Lake City ordinances passed in August in Park City by school boards, by county commissions. So that it was no longer a Salt Lake City thing, but it was 15, 20 cities and government aid units in Utah that went, well, we want to do the same for our residents. And then it was no longer that liberal Salt Lake City doing. And now it's statewide.
What was the church's hand in this?
They got some concessions. They got some concessions on their, they didn't want to be told who they couldn't hire for their employment. And they agreed, but they thought it was important for them to be on that side.
All right, folks, this is an interesting conversation. going on.
We can do it offline,
We can continue the chat.
but it's a good problem.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you all. It's a good conversation.